me past. Supposed to have to be pulling these hush puppies out your mother head.
I got a great big mighty, mighty long. When I get in the broad's ass, I make it sing a song.
I knew him before he ever had a record.
Oh, when he was in Long Beach?
Los Angeles.
The legendary comedian and actor passed away 16 years ago. And during this time, there have been some rumors circulating about Rudy Ray Moore's life, and even his death. Recently, his family has decided to speak up and confirm these long-standing rumors. What secrets will they reveal? Are the stories about Moore's life and legacy true, or have they been exaggerated? Let's find out more.
Dolomite is my name and up mother game.
If not for Eddie Murphy's latest movie, Rudy Ray Moore might have stayed just as hidden today as he was in the early 1970s. But now, because of Murphy's work, many new people will get to know Moore, a singer who became an actor and who changed comedy, movies, and even hip-hop. For Black entertainers, Moore's work was powerful and has kept its influence for years.
I'm not here to brag, nor here to boast. I can sit on a tombstone.
Moore was born and raised in Fort Smith, Arkansas, in a place called the Johnson House. Growing up in this small town, he learned a lot about life. But as he got older, he wanted to see and experience more of the world. So he decided to move, eventually settling in Akron, Ohio, and later in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In these new cities, he started working in local clubs, singing, dancing, and even preaching at churches. His passion for performing began to grow. While in Milwaukee, Moore kept busy, performing on stage in nightclubs. He often entertained people with his singing, dancing, and comedy, even creating a character named Prince DuMarr for his act. He had a natural talent for making people laugh and keeping their attention, whether through jokes or dance moves. Moore was a person who liked to try new things and entertain, and he didn't mind working hard to get better.
Got your legs crossed. You better uncross them, you're choking yourself. That's what I call peanut butter legs. Brown, smooth, and easy to spread.
At one point, Moore decided to join the U.S. Army, where he served in an entertainment unit. This meant that his job in the Army was to entertain other soldiers and keep their spirits up. While serving in Germany, he was given the nickname Harlem Hillbilly because he had a unique style of singing country songs with a rhythm and blues R&B twist. People enjoyed the way he brought a fresh, exciting sound to traditional country music, making it his own. During his time in the Army, Moore's interest in comedy grew stronger. One day, while he was singing for other servicemen, he started adding jokes to his performance, and the crowd loved it. This positive reaction encouraged him to explore comedy even more seriously, and he began to develop his comedic skills. After completing his service in the Army and receiving an honorable discharge, Moore returned to the United States and started a new chapter. He moved first to Seattle, Washington, before eventually settling in Los Angeles, California. In Los Angeles, he continued to perform in clubs, where he worked hard to entertain people with his unique blend of music and comedy. While performing in Los Angeles, Moore caught the attention of record producer Dootsy Williams. Williams recognized Moore's talent and helped him start a career in the music industry. Moore recorded rhythm and blues songs with various record labels, including Federal, Cash, Ball, Kent, and Imperial. He stayed busy releasing several songs that showcased his unique voice and energetic style. Moore also began to focus on comedy albums, a new direction that would eventually become his main claim to fame. Later on, Rudy Ray would discover a character that would change his life: Dolomite. It all began at Dolphins of Hollywood, a famous record store in Los Angeles where Moore was working. Moore started hearing wild, funny, and obscene stories about a character named Dolomite. These stories came from a man named Rico, a local character known for hanging out on the streets and telling outrageous stories to anyone who would listen. Rico wasn't a professional comedian. He was just a regular guy who enjoyed sharing his tales, full of wild language and adult humor. One day, while telling his Dolomite stories in the middle of the record store, he attracted a crowd. People loved Rico's hilarious, over-the-top performance and couldn't stop laughing. Moore realized there was something special in the way Rico told these stories and saw an opportunity. He thought, what if a professional comedian like me performed Dolomite? To make this happen, Moore invited Rico to his home, offering him some drinks and a little bit of marijuana to loosen up. Then he recorded Rico telling his Dolomite stories on tape. Inspired by these tapes, Moore took on the character of Dolomite himself. He made it his own, adding his flair and personality, and started performing it in his comedy act. Audiences loved it, and Dolomite became a hit. Rudy Ray Moore took it a step further by recording 3 comedy albums based on the Dolomite character. Eat Out More Often, This Belongs to Me, and The Dirty Dozens. He combined his rhymes with jazz and R&B music in the background, giving the performances a unique style. The content was bold and, at times, shocking. Moore talked about pimps, hustlers, and life on the streets, using language that was raw and explicit. While these topics and words were too risky for regular record stores, his albums became a big success in Black communities across America. People loved Moore's humor, his rebellion against the normal way of doing things, and his honest look at street life.
We were the most sampled entertainers. Most people sampled us than they did anybody.
Moore's inspiration didn't just come from Rico's stories. He was also influenced by famous comedians like Red Fox and Richard Pryor, who were known for pushing boundaries with their jokes. He borrowed from the style of the dozens, an old tradition of playful, often insulting rhymes used in African-American culture. Moore made his recordings in his own apartment, inviting friends to be there so it would sound like a party, with people laughing and cheering along. Rudy Ray Moore, known for his bold and funny records, spent almost all his money to make the movie Dolomite. He started filming in January 1974, and by April 1975, it was released all across the United States. People often say it's one of the best blaxploitation movies, which were popular in the 1970s. These movies were made for Black audiences and showed strong Black characters, often facing tough situations. For many people, Dolomite became a classic.
Me past, supposed to have to be pulling these hush puppies out your ass.
In the movie, Moore played the character Dolomite, who was loved by many as the ultimate hero from the ghetto. Dolomite was tough, funny, and always ready to protect his community from bad guys. He was dressed sharp, had quick wit, and was also skilled in kung fu. To add to his unique style, Dolomite was a pimp who had a team of women who could also fight to defend him. The character was known for his strength, charm, and fierce protection of his neighborhood. For a lot of fans, he was the perfect mix of action and comedy, showing both his toughness and his humor. When Dolomite became popular, Moore didn't stop. He followed up with other movies including The Human Tornado, The Monkey Hustle, and Petey Wheatstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law. His fans loved his wild and fearless style, which he continued to show in his music and comedy albums.
I said, your drawers may be clean and trimmed and laced, but you ain't gonna never set your ass in this boy's face.
Moore's jokes and stories were full of life, but they were also very explicit, meaning he used a lot of strong language and adult themes. Because of this, Moore wasn't seen much on regular TV shows or in big Hollywood films. Unlike some other Black comedians like Red Fox or Richard Pryor, who also told edgy jokes, Moore's style was too raw for most mainstream audiences. Back then, it was not easy for Black performers to get big roles or control their own projects. But Moore was determined to make his own way. Moore didn't wait around for anyone to give him a chance. Instead, he recorded his own comedy albums and sold them secretly while working at his day job. He wasn't allowed to sell them publicly because the comedy was very raw and different from what was usually heard on the radio or in stores. But people loved it, and Moore made enough money from these albums to fund a movie he wanted to make. A movie Hollywood wouldn't have backed.
Another frame up.
That's right.
Moore spent most of his earnings from the records to finance the movie Dolomite, which started filming. It was released and distributed nationally later on, and has been described as one of the great blaxploitation movies of the 1970s. The character was the ultimate ghetto hero, a bad dude, profane, skilled at kung fu, dressed to kill and hell-bent on protecting the community from evil menaces. He was a pimp with a kung fu fighting clique of prostitutes and he was known for his sexual prowess. While many people cheered his work, some critics felt that his movies reinforced negative stereotypes about black culture. Let's look at both sides to understand why Moore's films were both celebrated and criticized. Now, in the 70s, Hollywood was mostly run by white directors, actors, and producers. There weren't many roles for black actors, and when they did get roles, they often played small parts or stereotypical characters. Rudy Ray Moore and other blaxploitation filmmakers decided to change that. They created movies with black heroes who were strong, confident, and brave, showing a side of black life that wasn't often seen on the screen. Fans loved Moore's character Dolomite because he was tough, funny, and took on the bad guys. He didn't care about fitting into mainstream expectations and didn't back down. For many black audiences, seeing Dolomite fight against corruption and unfair treatment felt empowering. Moore was able to make audiences laugh while also making them feel proud. For people who had long felt left out of Hollywood stories, Moore's films offered something new and exciting. However, Moore's movies weren't loved by everyone. Some critics believed his films played into stereotypes that showed black people in a negative light. They worried that characters like Dolomite, a flashy pimp and street hustler, were only adding to old stereotypes that already hurt black communities. These critics argued that instead of breaking down stereotypes, Moore's movies might actually make them stronger by making certain behaviors seem normal or funny. Moore didn't let the criticism bother him. He argued that his movies were meant to be fun and exaggerated, not realistic. To him, Dolomite was a character created to entertain, not to teach a lesson. Moore explained that he drew inspiration from old storytelling traditions where characters were bigger than life, bold, loud, and impossible to ignore. He believed that audiences understood that his characters were meant to be extreme and didn't represent all black people.
Me past, supposed to have to be pulling these hush puppies out your ass.
Moore saw his films as a way of showing a certain kind of urban black experience, with characters who were clever, street smart, and ready to fight back against unfair treatment. He wanted his characters to be memorable and make people laugh, while also showing strength in the face of obstacles. In his view, his films were about pride and confidence, not about creating negative images. Moore went on to make several Dolomite films after the first one was so successful. Indeed, Moore's first Dolomite cost him $100,000 to make, and it ultimately made $12 million at the box office. Today, blaxploitation films like Dolomite have a special place in film history.
You got your legs crossed. You better uncross them. You're choking yourself. That's what I call peanut butter legs. Brown, smooth, and easy to spread.
Rudy wasn't afraid to use strong language and dive into adult themes, which made him stand out. In his comedy albums, Moore used a lot of raunchy humor. While some found his comedy offensive or vulgar, others found it fresh, funny, and bold. This made Moore popular with people who wanted something different from traditional comedy. Some people criticized Moore's work, saying it was too dirty and that his language was inappropriate. But Moore didn't mind the criticism. In fact, he saw it as part of his charm. His audience knew what they were getting, bold jokes that were unapologetically adult. Moore didn't try to make everyone like his comedy. Instead, he focused on connecting with people who appreciated his raw humor. Over time, this approach helped him build a dedicated fan base. At the same time, Moore often spoke in his church and regularly took his mother to the National Baptist Convention. He said that, "I wasn't saying dirty words just to say them. It was a form of art, sketches in which I developed ghetto characters who cursed. I don't want to be referred to as a dirty old man, rather a ghetto expressionist."
Amen. I got a great big mighty, mighty long. When I get in the broad's ass, I make it sing a song.
Interestingly, Moore's style didn't just influence comedy, it also had an impact on music, especially rap. In the 1980s and 1990s, rappers were starting to use strong language and talk about similar themes in their lyrics. Many of these artists saw Moore as an inspiration. For example, the group 2 Live Crew, known for their controversial lyrics, openly said that Moore's bold style had influenced their music. Just like Moore, these rappers used explicit language and talked about things that some people found shocking. They wanted to make a statement, and they saw Moore's work as a blueprint for pushing boundaries. Snoop Dogg said that without Rudy Ray Moore, there would be no Snoop Dogg. And that's for real.
Like I said, without him, there wouldn't be no rap community. He was doing it before we knew what to do with it. And we're going to continue to push this real and keep it going on and taking it to the next level and letting the younger generation know what he means to this industry and what he means to this, community that we call rap, and how we should cherish every moment that we spend with the great.
Moore's influence on rap was important because he helped open the door for artists to express themselves freely. Without his groundbreaking work in comedy, rap might not have developed in the same way. His style showed that humor and storytelling could be mixed with edgy language to make a point. This freedom to be raw and real became part of rap's identity. Outside of his character, Rudy was a much quieter, private person, and he kept his personal life to himself. Over the years, some close friends and people who worked with Rudy have suggested that he might have been bisexual or even gay. This wasn't something Rudy talked about, and back in the 1970s and 1980s, the entertainment world was not very open about these kinds of topics. If a public figure admitted to being gay or bisexual back then, it could hurt their career or make fans see them differently. So if Rudy was indeed bisexual or gay, he probably felt he couldn't share this part of his life publicly. Many people believe that Rudy created the Dolomite character as a way to hide his true self. By playing a character who was so obviously macho and straight, he could keep people from asking questions about his personal life. While Rudy kept his romantic life a secret, Dolomite was openly chasing women all the time. The Dolomite character gave Rudy a way to build a barrier between himself and the public, a way to keep his private life private. It allowed him to become a star without letting anyone know the real Rudy Ray Moore. But because of this, fans are left wondering about who he truly was as a person. Moore never married. Entertainer Stanton Z. LaVey, a friend of Moore's, said in 2019 that Moore was very much bisexual, if not gay, and that his Dolomite persona helped cover it up. Even though rumors about his sexuality have been around for a while, there is no solid proof, and it's hard to say for sure what Rudy's true orientation was. In those days, the industry wasn't supportive of LGBTQ+ individuals, especially not black men. The pressure to hide one's true identity was strong, and many felt they had no choice but to stay in the closet. This made people wonder even more about Rudy's life.
I didn't even care, because I was the same thing he was, so whatever they did said about him, and that's it fell on me too, so.
Right.
In the later years of his life, he stayed busy in the entertainment world. In 1990, Moore appeared on Big Daddy Kane's album, Taste of Chocolate, and also made an appearance in Eric B. and Rakim's music video for the song In the Ghetto. This was just the start of his continued involvement in the music scene. 4 years later, he showed up on Method Man's album, Tikal and 2 Live Crew's Back at Your Ass for the 9/4. The 2 Live Crew even said they were inspired by Moore's use of strong language in his acts. Moore made a guest appearance on the popular TV show Martin in an episode titled The Players Came Home. This was a fun return to television for Moore. He also brought back his famous character Dolomite for some music videos, including Busta Rhymes' album When Disaster Strikes and Snoop Dogg's album No Limit Top Dog. Moore was even digitally added into scenes of Old Dirty Bastard's music video for the song Got Your Money. The year 2000 saw Moore playing Dolomite again in the movie Big Money Hustlers, a film by the rap group Insane Clown Posse. It was a fun and creative project that kept Moore's character alive in a different kind of movie. Moore also made a brief appearance on Busta Rhymes' 2001 album Genesis. He continued to stay active and relevant in the entertainment industry. In 2005, Moore lent his voice to the animated show Sons of Butcher, where he played characters named Rudy and Joseph in Season 2. A few years later, in 2008, Moore worked on the song I Live for the Funk, which also featured Blowfly and Daniel Jordan. This song was special because it marked the 30-year anniversary of the movie Petey Wheatstraw, a film Moore was known for. Sadly, this song would become Moore's final recording before his death. Also, back in the early 2000s, writers Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski had a big idea about making a movie about Rudy Ray Moore, a famous African-American comedian and actor. But strangely enough, they didn't come up with the idea themselves. It was actually Eddie Murphy who brought it to them. In around 2003, Eddie Murphy reached out and asked to meet with them. He was a huge fan of their movie Ed Wood, and during the meeting, he started quoting lines from the film. At one point, Murphy asked, "Do you guys know who Rudy Ray Moore is?" Both writers immediately knew who Moore was, and it was like a light bulb went off in their heads. Karaszewski said it felt like the perfect idea. Eddie Murphy playing Rudy Ray Moore? It just made so much sense. The writers even got a chance to meet Rudy Ray Moore himself. At the time, Moore was in his 70s, and he had a lot to say about his long and difficult career in entertainment. He had worked hard and wanted a movie to tell his story and give him the recognition he deserved. But despite their best efforts, no studio was willing to make the movie.
He couldn't get in with them. They were like, "Nah, we don't want to work with you." It's like, I can't even make a black exploitation movie? It was like, man. So he had to go back door and get his own stuff made. And he became like a little hero of mine. He was like this guerrilla filmmaker from the 70s.
Karaszewski said sometimes, no matter how good an idea is, it's hard to get anyone to agree to it. So the years went by, and Rudy Ray Moore passed away in 2008 at the age of 81. The writers felt bad because they had promised Moore that they would make a movie about him, but it never happened. However, Karaszewski didn't give up on Moore's story. In fact, after Moore died, he held a tribute screening for Dolomite, one of Moore's most famous movies. It was packed, and they even had a discussion on stage with people who worked on the film. By that time, though, the writers had moved on to other projects. They thought someone else would eventually make the movie about Rudy Ray Moore. They figured their idea had slipped away. But things changed in 2016. After the huge success of The People vs. O.J. Simpson, a TV series that Alexander and Karaszewski worked on, suddenly found themselves in a good position to make their passion projects happen. The series won an Emmy Award and many other accolades. Now, with some influence in Hollywood, they decided to try again to make the Rudy Ray Moore movie happen. They contacted Eddie Murphy and asked if he would still be interested in the project. A week later, they were at Netflix pitching the idea, and the streaming service loved it. The project moved quickly, and soon Dolomite Is My Name, the movie about Rudy Ray Moore, was born. It turned out to be a huge hit, and Eddie Murphy received great praise for his role as Moore. Looking back, Alexander and Karaszewski were glad they didn't give up on the idea. It wasn't easy to get the movie made, but in the end, it was a success and helped bring Rudy Ray Moore the recognition he deserved. Today, Rudy Ray Moore is remembered as a pioneer who wasn't afraid to take risks. His comedy and films are still celebrated by fans who appreciate his courage to be different.